The City of Antioch currently has a 30-year-old alarm ordinance. The Antioch Police Department has been working hard recently to amend that to better serve our community and also to provide better protection for our police officers responding to numerous false alarms. Lieutenant Desmond Bittner will be making a presentation on this item and then will be available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, City Council, Mayor. Appreciate your time tonight. I'll try to make this as short as possible. I know you have busy things to do. What you have before you this evening is the ordinance repealing and reenacting our existing alarm systems municipal code and amending the city master fee schedule as it relates to alarm systems. The city has had a chapter in its municipal code concerning alarm systems since 1989. This proposed revision to the chapter is based on an analysis of staff time spent in the administration of alarm systems and false alarm response, as well as the developments in technology and services that have occurred over the past 3 decades. As of today, there are approximately 12,500 homes and businesses in the City of Antioch that have alarm systems. The vast majority of alarms to which the Antioch Police Department respond are false. Most false alarms are the result of improper maintenance or careless use of the alarm. The public and police are subjected to needless danger when the officers are called to respond to these alarms. Furthermore, officers responding to false alarms are not available to carry out essential police duties. Over 98% of the alarms that the Antioch Police Department respond to are false. For the past 3 years, our police department has averaged approximately 8,000 alarm calls per year. Of the 8,000 alarm calls, approximately 7,000 require police response. Of the 7,000 alarms the police respond to every year, only approximately 115 are valid alarms. Here's a few examples. Just in the past year, we have one local business responsible for 43 false alarms, another local business responsible for 37 false alarms, another responsible for 25 false alarms. The same can be seen with residential false alarms. In the past year, we had one local resident responsible for 21 false alarms, another 13, and another with 10 false alarms. To better mitigate these realities, it's proposed that the following key changes be made to our existing alarm ordinance. The first change would be employee alarm confirmation for all burglar alarm dispatch requests. This means that prior to an alarm company reporting an alarm to police dispatch, the alarm must be confirmed. The alarm can be confirmed through either video, audio, multiple zone activations, glass break sensors, or confirmed through the alarm user. It is important to mention that more serious alarms, such as robbery, hold-up, or duress alarms, would not require alarm confirmation and will remain an immediate alarm dispatch request. The second key change establishes a single callback procedure for panic alarms. What this means is on all panic alarms, the alarm company would be required to make one call to the user prior to notifying police dispatch in an effort to prevent false alarms. And this really comes into play with a lot of the key fobs you see as far as alarm companies are issuing key fobs for panic alarms. About 99% of the time those are false, and something as simple as a call back to the alarm user can prevent those false alarms. The third key change should be establishing an enforceable alarm suspension for chronic false alarm violators who have more than 4 false alarm responses in a 1-year period. What we have seen is that a small population of alarm users are responsible for the large portion of false alarms. Alarm response suspensions are effective in preventing chronic abuse. The fourth key change will be providing alarm installation companies and alarm monitoring companies with guidelines for reporting alarm-related information and establishing fines for alarm installation companies and monitoring companies who don't comply with the ordinance. The fifth key change, begin an alarm user registration process rather than a one-time registration process. And the sixth key change would be allowing outsourcing of the administration of alarm systems. Under the current alarm system ordinance, there are already fees established to help offset the cost of staff time related to alarm system registration and response. Unfortunately, the staff time related to alarm response far exceeds the fees established to defray the associated cost. However, the newly proposed ordinance is designed to reduce unnecessary response to false alarms and allow for outsourcing, thereby reducing staff time and resulting in revenue-neutral administration of the ordinance. The proposed action would not increase the dollar amount of any alarm system fee already established in the city master fee schedule. The associated permit fees for alarm registration will not change from the existing $30. However, the fee will change from a one-time fee to an annual fee. An annual registration is necessary to assure accurate information is kept on file for alarm users. With cancellations and properties changing hands, the only way to maintain accurate information is through an annual registration. You can't measure what you can't count, and annual registrations are one way to help us count the amount of alarm users we have in the city. A registration late charge of $15 and a late charge fee of 5% for late fines will be added to the master fee schedule to assist in compliance. These late fee charges correspond with other late fee charges that have been set for other city service fees. The false alarm response fee of $205 will remain the same under this ordinance and will still allow for the first two responses to be of no charge for alarm users who hold valid alarm registration. In order to not be charged for the second false alarm response, the registered alarm user will be required to complete a 10-minute alarm user awareness course that can be completed online. If an alarm user chooses to not complete the alarm user awareness class, after the second false alarm, they can choose to pay the $100 fine for a false alarm fee in place of the course. The proposed fee structure for non-registered alarm users will still allow for the first response to be of no charge as long as they complete the alarm user awareness class. The second false alarm for a non-registered alarm user will result in an already established false alarm fee of $205. Fees for operating a suspended alarm system are charged in addition to the already established false alarm fees and begin at $205 for the first response, $350 for the second, and $500 for the third response. Additional fees are proposed for alarm monitoring companies and alarm install companies who fail to comply with conditions of the ordinance. A fee of $30 will be applied to any alarm monitoring company who fails to report a new install, and for alarm monitoring companies who fail to use alarm confirmation reporting procedures. The $205 false alarm response fee will also be charged after the second false response, caused by an alarm install company or an alarm monitoring company reporting on a suspended location. As I previously mentioned, this new ordinance paves the way for the city to outsource alarm administration completely, relieving the burden on staff and enhancing alarm system related services. And what I mean by enhancing alarm system related services is by outsourcing will allow the residents to pay registration fees online, pay fees on other fees and fines online, rather than our current system that only allows for to mail a check or to pay in person. Alarm outsourcing has become an industry standard, and over 500 cities across the United States have started outsourcing the administration of alarm services. The cities of San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, Vallejo, Hayward, Richmond, Walnut Creek, Pleasant Hill, Danville, San Ramon, and Concord are a few of the local cities that have already started outsourcing their alarm services. In the interest of using limited police resources most effectively and efficiently, the number of false alarms in our city can and should be reduced. The purpose of this ordinance revision is to reduce the dangers and the inefficiencies associated with false alarms and to encourage alarm companies and alarm users to maintain the operational reliability of their alarm system in an effort to reduce or eliminate false alarm dispatch requests. It is estimated that the revisions in this proposed ordinance can result in a 50% or more reduction in false alarms. Some cities who have implemented similar programs have seen false alarm reductions in upwards of 70 to 90%. I also believe it's important to mention that the city attorney, not the city attorney appointed tonight, but Derek Cole, has reviewed this proposed ordinance revision along with the master fee schedule change and is in support of the ordinance. The ordinance has also been reviewed by the Security Industry Alarm Coalition, which is an organization created to help improve relationships between law enforcement and the alarm industry. The Security Industry Alarm Coalition is also in support of this ordinance. In conclusion, I'd like to say that the Antioch Police Department is committed to engaging with our community through community policing. One aspect of community policing is problem solving and developing collaborative solutions to problems that are causing unnecessary police resources. I believe this is an example of an effective community policing, as the ordinance revision will ultimately increase the effectiveness of police services and would also improve police-community relations. I'm available to answer any questions or concerns you may have in regards to the ordinance, but if you don't mind, prior, I'd like to address a few corrections to the staff report as well as the ordinance itself. And the first correction would be on page 4 of the staff report. If you look at Chapter 14, Title 4.10, that subsection D should be subsection E like Edward. And then on page 22 of the staff report, there's a small typo. Maybe on the third line, which should be the second sentence, it should be 15 days. It has 15 in parentheses, but it should say 15 days after its passage. And those should be the only two corrections. And like I mentioned, I'm available to answer any questions or concerns you may have. Yes. Different pages? Okay.
This is a public hearing, so if you guys can work that out, and I'll open the public hearing. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Open the public hearing. Are there any requests to speak? And I have one more. Michael Salk.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and city staff. My name is Michael Salk. I am the current Northern Vice President of the California Alarm Association and the local chapter of the East Bay Alarm Association. I'm acting president currently. That is one of the 11 chapters that the CAA is comprised of. The CAA's mission is to serve our members and associates by being the industry advocate and liaison with law enforcement and fire departments. We're here to serve the people of California by being reliable and trusted source for safety and security. I am also the Vice President of Reed Brothers Security, a small security provider in the East Bay, and we cover services in this area as well. I want to share our support from the California Alarm Association for this alarm ordinance the police department is asking you to adopt. The ordinance before you contains all the best practices which have been developed by law enforcement executives on a national level. Those best practices are permitting for alarm users, limiting free responses, meaningful fines for false alarms, suspension for chronic abusers of false alarms, utilizing enhanced call confirmation, providing an appeal process, and lastly, having a confidentiality clause. These best practices will reduce your false alarm calls for service. Not only do you have the support of the CAA and the East Bay Alarm Association, which represent locally, you are also supported by SEAC, as the lieutenant had mentioned. SEAC represents the 4 largest alarm industry associations in North America and is a one voice for the alarm industry. You have their support on your ordinance. The law enforcement liaison of SEAC, Steve Kiefer, couldn't be here tonight. He's stuck on the other side of a big pile of snow in Reno, so he was not able to make it through. However, he wanted me to share the support from SEAC. Steve is a former chief of the police, chief of police for the city of Sparks, Nevada. He also wanted me to mention that that even though that you have the support of CAA and SEAC, there is one concern worth mentioning. Your alarm ordinance has verified response in it. Verified response is recommended by CAA and SEAC for chronic abusers, but not recommended for all users. Although the ordinance before you has softened the VR, the verified response, by allowing the decision for police dispatch by the alarm user if they can be reached. If the alarm user is not reached by telephone, then they do not meet the other criteria, the VR requirements, no police dispatch will occur. There may be instances where no dispatch is allowed by the monitoring station, and although slight, a chance of crime occurring with no response could occur. Other than this VR issue, as I said, we do show support for the ordinance before you, but it is not ideal to deal with the potential risk of life and property. I think that the lieutenant did a great job of allowing the alarm industry to come in and he listened to them. I would like to thank Lieutenant Bittner and Chief Brooks for their willingness to include the alarm industry for insight, opinions, and concerns. Lieutenant Bittner was open-minded to feedback and included the alarm industry in the writing of the ordinance before you. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dr. Jeffrey Klingler.
One thing I'd like to mention is that the Alarm Association is here to help the police department. I've already informed the chief that we can help eliminate them. As you mentioned, there were several of the, a small number of the users that were the, primary false alarm causers, and we're willing to work with you to eliminate those.
Thank you. Dr. Jeffrey Klingler.
Good evening, Mayor Wright, council members. I didn't realize tonight certain aspects of this, but I'm fully behind what the police department wants to do. I fully appreciate the drain on resources that's unnecessary. I know it puts officers at risk. Certainly, chronic abusers should be taken off the grid or be penalized for it. Certainly, alarm systems need to be registered. Police need to know about it. I actually only have one part of this that I find objectionable, and that is an annual renewal fee of $30 a year. Aside from how is that going to be administered, how are people going to find out about it, how are people, I can anticipate a lot of late fees, because how are people going to know, who's going to administrate it, and I'm already paying a monthly fee to my service provider. I'm not seeing what I get for an extra $30 per year. If I don't have any alarms, if I don't draw down on any services, why should I have to pay an additional fee of $30 a year? That's a fair amount of money when we consider how many alarm systems are in the city. So I'm in favor of all this. I understand why the police department wants it. I'm behind them on that. I agree with them. The only thing I have an objection to is the $30 annual renewal fee, if that's what I understand that this is. So aside from that, if it weren't for that, I'd be 100% behind this. So I think it needs to be considered, how is it administered? Is it really necessary? If you have an administration cost for collecting the fee, why are you collecting the fee in the first place? So anyway, that is the only objection I have. I'd like for you to consider whether you really want to add an additional $30 a year to all your residents who have alarm systems. I'm not seeing what I'm getting for that portion of this particular proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other requests for the public to speak?
None have been received.
Seeing none, the public hearing portion of this is now closed. This item is now before council. Questions, comments? Mayor Pro Tem Motz.
Lieutenant, so how do you distinguish, you were saying, and I think this gets to the verified response thing.
Yes.
How do you distinguish when you're going to, if there's a robbery, so they try to call and there's no response there, how do you determine if you...
Yes. I think the best way to explain that, there's different types of alarms. You have your robbery alarms, you have your hold-up alarms, you have your duress alarms. If an alarm comes in as a robbery, duress, or hold-up, that's an immediate police response. There's no verification there. The verification is in regards to burglar alarms, so residential, commercial alarms that would trigger during a general alarm, such as a break-in or something like that. And there's a number of ways that can be verified. The first way it can be verified is if your alarm goes off. If your alarm company calls you and says, Miss Motz, your alarm's going off, is it a good alarm? If you said, yes, it's a good alarm, nobody's supposed to be at my house or my business, the police would respond. If you had some type of security system that allowed for video or audio and your alarm company saw somebody on your property or heard from your property, that would be a verification after calls are made to you to confirm that nobody should be on your property, and the police would respond. The same would also apply if you have an alarm system that allows for multiple zones. So let's say your alarm company gets activation at the front door and also gets a motion alert in the living room. That would be a dual zone activation. That would be an alarm confirmation. Your alarm company would call you to confirm somebody's intruding in your house. If you answer the phone, or if you didn't answer the phone, the police would still respond. And the last type of verification that we mentioned I think I touched on it, was the audio and the video feed. And that's, so with those type of verifications there, including also a glass break, which would be included in the multiple zone activation. So you have video, you have audio, glass break, multiple zone activation, or a confirmation from the alarm user. Those would be the verification process.
Okay. Another question. Can you repeat the number of past year, how many alarms there were and how many were actual verified alarms?
Yes, ma'am. We had approximately 8,000 alarm calls. Of that 8,000, about 1,000 were canceled, so about 7,000 responses, and there are approximately 115 valid alarms. And that's the average over 2016, 2017, and 2018. Those numbers are pretty consistent amongst those 3 years.
And then lastly, I'm just in regards to this annual renewal, I'm assuming that this service company would be taking care of that and reaching out to let people know, based on when they signed up and registered their alarm, that your annual is up, it's time for you to renew. Is that kind of how that would work?
Yes, ma'am. There's a lot of third-party outsourcing companies out there, so we'd go through an RFP process, and depending on what proposals were received, they did take care of that, yes.
I am also a little bit concerned about, another $30 every year, especially if somebody's, really not using the service. Anyway, I don't know if that can be mitigated a little bit or reduced, but sometimes I just feel like we're nickel and diming our citizens to death. So that's a concern of mine.
Okay, and that $30, ma'am, we just kept that consistent with the existing fee in the master fee schedule.
Right, but they just pay that one time now, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wilson?
Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant, for your report. Can you talk to me, and it seems like the gentleman from the association kind of addressed it, can you talk to me about, it seems like prior to this, we needed more involvement from the alarm company to verify that these calls, the alarm was going off and that they were verifying that these were calls, either calling the homeowner or sending a patrol out. Can you talk about, it seems like that piece seemed to be missing or kind of, for lack of a better word, weak on that part prior to this. Can you talk about how this will strengthen that part of the relationship between the police, the alarm company, and the actual homeowner?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so our previous ordinance, which was, as mentioned, was written in 1989, didn't have any type of procedure for the alarm companies to report to the police department. There's probably approximately 400 alarm monitoring companies throughout the nation, if not more. And I can't say how many are in Antioch, but I could only speculate there's probably a few hundred. And every alarm company will report those false alarms to the police dispatch in a different way. But with this new ordinance here, it will give clear direction on when and how they should report the false alarms to the police dispatch, such as if it is a holdup or a duress or a panic alarm, that'll be a direct call to dispatch. If it's a burglar type related alarm, there has to be some confirmation process prior to them notifying police.
Okay, so this will help. This definitely will help strengthen that. And then also, I like the piece about the educational part about making sure some of our repeat vendors. Okay, do you really know how to work your alarm system, or do you really, know how your alarm company has your system set up? I really like that piece for, what's almost gives a forgiveness for one of the alarms to make sure. Okay, we want to make sure you know how to work your alarm.
Yeah, exactly. That alarm awareness class, that could, solve the problem when it comes to false alarms. Maybe an alarm user just isn't familiar with their system, doesn't realize the drain on police resources. So they watch a fairly quick 10-minute online video, and that could prevent them from having any false alarms in the future. The ordinance also allows for over-the-phone conferences with alarm users, with the alarm monitoring company, as long as the outsourcing company. So in addition to that online class, if it is an issue that they think they can address over the phone or give them some tips or advice, the outsourcing company that we work with can also contact them over the phone and take care of that as well.
And you just answered my next question. For those that are maybe not computer savvy, is there an option for them to either go see somebody in person or talk to somebody over the phone on that educational piece?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Thorpe.
Yeah, I'm all for this. This is a no-brainer for me. The only, I do have just another fee that we're charging, which is fine, but the renewal kind of, and I know that's not a question for you, maybe it's a question for us. Do we really want the renewal fee? I get the initial registration, but I'm not necessarily sure we need a renewal fee. Second, there's an appeal process to this, and which I like, giving folks the opportunity to kind of, what I'm what I don't like is we have a Board of Administrative Appeals, and that's generally kind of our appeals process. Here, it's appealed to the Chief of Police. Is this kind of the standard, or is it?
I can't speak to other agencies, but that is the standard, and as far as I can tell. I had a lot of help from the alarm industry in writing this ordinance, and that was something that they suggested, so I could only presume that is kind of industry standard.
Okay.
And to touch on the annual registration fee, I just want to make a point. I think it's extremely important that there is some fee associated with annual registration, because if there isn't a fee associated with annual registration, there's really no incentive for the alarm user to send in that registration. And it's imperative that we have updated contact information for the alarm users. In order to make this program work, we need to have some type of contact, because what tends to happen now, the majority of our false alarms, we have no contact information for the alarm user, nor does the alarm company. So what happens is somebody's alarm goes off, and I could estimate probably about 5,000 of the alarms, probably 3/4 of them. The alarm company, like I said, can't get a hold of the alarm user, and nor can we. So then we're stuck responding to an alarm, and we have no idea who lives at the house.
Okay, I get that.
Right.
I get that. So whether it's, maybe it's 50, I don't know, maybe it's a different amount. I'm not sure. But I still, and I saw the Chief of Police. Were you going to say something in regards to? I could. Come on up. Come on down. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Just a couple things that I want to touch on real quick. Lieutenant Bittner's doing a great job with this. To answer your question in regards to an appeal to the Chief of Police, I could tell you that another appeal process that goes directly through me is on parking citations. And so this is not something that's unique when it comes to a service that's primarily run through the police department. I know the Board of Administrative Appeals deals with maybe some of the larger issues, but something like this or something like the parking citations, the appeal process usually goes through me, and that's typically how that's run. The other thing that I would maybe suggest or recommend in regards to, I heard what Dr. Klingler said in regards to the registration fee annually, and I think it's important that we do have an annual registration. One of the things that we constantly run into is the fact that people do not update their information, and we have people who have paid for an alarm permit 20 years ago who provided information that may have had a landline that don't have a landline now. Maybe they had friends who were their people who might have been someone who responded in lieu of themselves. And we want to make sure that we keep that information updated, and an annual registration would help with that. Now, what I might look into later as we progress through the process, because one of the things we do want to do is go through an RFP process and have a third party deal with the registration and the monitoring of the fines, is maybe see for the people who do not have any false alarms in a year's period, and maybe who do not have any changes on their registration form, maybe pay a lesser fee, because the fee is just merely designed to pay for and recoup the costs associated with the data entry and the input and the verification of the registration fee. Maybe we can look at, after we get this process rolling, finding out if for people who have less work to do on their annual registration and they have not been subject to additional fines from false alarms, that perhaps there could be a lesser amount for that. And that's something maybe that we could come back on a later basis and discuss after we see how the program progresses.
That would be something that I would definitely like to look at.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to look at that as well. And I didn't know that. I assumed that everything was even a parking violation. I thought the appeal process was through the Board of Administrative Appeals. I didn't realize it was to the Chief of Police, and so I didn't know that. But that does not change my mind. I mean, at least for me, everyone may have a different opinion. That I just feel that when people appeal, they should have a sense of neutral party in evaluating those types of appeals, not necessarily through the same department. But that's my opinion, and I don't think my opinion will change. So that's just. So I don't necessarily agree with that. But everything else I think is great.
And I'll add, perhaps, and I don't think this has happened, but perhaps if someone isn't happy with my decision, they can appeal my decision to the Board of Administrative Appeals, and I don't know if that's something that occurs.
Yeah. And if we could consider that, I'm happy to do so.
Councilmember Overchuk.
Well, Acting Captain Bittner.
Yes.
Everybody demoted him tonight. I'm going to give it back to you.
That's fine.
The only thing that I have to say is you answered a couple of my questions already previously, so thank you very much. On this registration and renewal fee, property managers have to pay a renewal fee. It doesn't get lessened even if it's the same every year. Same thing with the business license fee. It's still the same on the renewal. So I understand what Dr. Klinger is saying, but it's the same on every other renewal on the master fee schedule that we have. So if somebody knows something different than what I'm saying, please say something, but it's there. And I've gotten lots of complaints from realtors saying, okay, or property managers, why do I have to pay this fee every year? Now I've got an additional fee. It's for the time of the person that's inputting it. Even if mine hadn't changed, they still got to reach out to me. So it's still somebody's time having to do that. So I don't have a problem with this fee, and I want to thank you for your report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is a great ordinance. I think we're 30 years behind the times, and it's time for us to catch up to technology. So I think that's great. I think there is, I've heard from two, and I'm of the consensus to bring something back to us after you've hired a company to see what that might look like for those that are not causing problems, what that second rate might be moving forward. I think you've heard direction on that. But as far as a motion on this, Councilmember Overchuk.
I'll make a motion the City Council take the following actions. 1, waive the first reading and consider the introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Antioch repealing and reenacting Chapter 14 of Title 4 of the Antioch Municipal Code concerning alarm systems, and number 2, adoption and resolution amending the master fee schedule to assign new alarm system fees with corresponding values.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Overchuk, a second by Councilmember Thorpe.
Mr. Mayor, if I could have the maker of the motion on Section 4 of the 4-14.19 scope of police duties, on Section 4, add the word days on the third line down, so it reads, the city clerk shall cause the ordinance to be published within 15 days. The word days is missing.
So moved. You said it so fast I can't write it all down, Ernie.
You did good.
We
Thank
have
you.
a motion changed. Do we have the second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Thorpe. Please cast your votes.
There are 5 affirmative votes, and the ordinance will be placed on the February 26th agenda.